The head of the United Nations tourism arm, Taleb Rifai, has blasted the all-inclusive hotel concept, which happens to be at the center of Jamaica's tourism product, saying it creates a big gulf between those tourists and locals.
All-inclusives are responsible for the vast majority, over 80% of tourists who head to Jamaica.
The all-inclusive concept, pioneered by Club Med more than 60 years ago, is not just a major part of Jamaica's, but the Caribbean's tourism landscape.
But today, though he did not refer to Jamaican all-inclusive specifically, Mr. Rifai took on the all-inclusive concept as he addressed the United Nations Global Tourism Conference in Jamaica's tourist Mecca, Montego Bay, St. James.
TVJ's Lana Franklin explains what he said.
Secretary General of the UNWTO, Taleb Rifai, is calling for an end to what he calls modern-day plantations being built in communities lacking proper infrastructure and basic amenities. He says these modern plantations, which are known as exclusive resorts, cannot be built in areas where residents' standard of living are way lower than the visitors which they serve. Mr. Rifai, a former Jordanian tourism minister, says this can only be achieved by lowering the walls between visitors and the community. The UNWTO Secretary General was speaking at the opening ceremony of the United Nations Tourism Conference being held at the Montego Bay Convention Center in St. James today. Mr. Rifai argues that the relationship between countries, their neighbors and people can only be strengthened and enforced by eliminating the walls between them.
We cannot continue to build five-star hotels in three-star communities. We're ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. That's a very important message we have to keep in mind. We have to continue to lower the walls between the host community and the visitors. We cannot let our visitors live in bubbles. That is not acceptable anymore.
He says such issues must be addressed with great courage and conviction.
Because, my dear friends, it's all about people at the end of the day. And we need to move very bravely, very courageously on that front. This is the message I want to leave with you, my dear friends. Last but not least, I'm certain that part of the answer lies in strong and effective and transparent partnerships between the private sector and the governments. We cannot achieve any community empowerment without the full cooperation of the private sectors and the owners of the infrastructure business.
Over the last 3 decades, all-inclusive resorts have grown significantly, now accounting for over 80% of Jamaica's hotel room count. Critics say very little of the tourist spend is trickled down to local businesses. Lana Franklin, TVJ News.